Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. Listen, the truth and the tension. The truth and the tension. What your obstacles are trying to teach you guys, what your obstacles are trying to teach you. It is Gratitude Shift Wednesday. It's Gratitude Shift Wednesday, and we are here for another life lesson. We are here for another life lesson, you guys. Listen, the truth and the tension, what your obstacles are trying to teach you. We're talking about seizing control of our life, this our series for this month, right? And here's the hard truth, right? Here is the hard truth that most of us avoid. The things that feel the heaviest in our lives are often the places where we're out of alignment with our real values, right? Maybe you say you value rest, but your calendar says you really value proving yourself, right? Maybe you say you value peace, but you keep saying yes out of guilt. And maybe you say you value growth, you guys, but you're still tolerating people who don't see you, right? That tension, that's the tension that you're feeling, right? That's the obstacle showing up that wants or needs to be realigned. Good morning. Good morning. That is the obstacle that's showing up that needs to be realigned, you guys. So, what your obstacles are trying to teach you, that is what we're talking about today. Why? Right? Why? Because I've lived the tension of knowing what matters most to me, and still chose wait because I've lived the tension of knowing what matters to me and still choosing what drained me, you guys. I created this session to help you pause, to reflect, and to realize that your biggest obstacle might not be a problem to solve, but a pattern to name, right? But a pattern to name. And it's time to really stop tolerating what what doesn't align. Good morning, Mariah. Good morning. Good morning, everyone. Good morning, everyone. Good morning, everyone. Okay, so here's our disclaimer for today. This session is really designed to help you identify the emotional and situational obstacles that have pulled you out of alignment with your values. All right, awareness is step one, but transformation comes when you respond differently. If you're serious about your healing, you guys, don't just see the obstacle, listen to it. Start listening to it. And we already know that intention with no action, right? It really is not impactful. So if you want the help as you're going through this session, you know that Project Life is here to support you. Good morning, Miss Jackie. Good morning, Miss Jackie. Good morning, Miss Jackie. So, and then good morning, everyone, right? It's Wednesday. It's Gratitude Shift Wednesday, you guys. I want to welcome you back to Life Lessons with Dr. Shiela Little. I'm Dr. Shiela Little for everybody who's new here. Life Lessons is really a part of our Project Life initiative, right? And Project Life is truly where we turn theory into practice. We turn theory into practice. I've been a clinical therapist for 20 years, on my own business for 13 years, right? And I wanted to do a project this year that really focused on teaching people how to really walk in their purpose, how to really align, advance, and accelerate their life. Okay. And that's what Project Life is about. Okay. So let's take our deep breath. Let's take a deep breath. All right. This is your space, right? No pressure. No pressure. Good morning. Good morning, Patty Cake. She said, intention without action it's just a wonderful thought. Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Okay, so let's take our deep breath. This is our space. We've already done, you guys, what we were, we already taking care of our person, right? So now we're coming together as a community. Let's breathe in, feel our feet on the floor, right? If we're laying down, let's feel our legs, thighs, our butts in the seat. If we're at work, when we're standing, let's just get present in the body, our torso, right? Breathing in and breathing out, just getting present, our backs, feeling our chest, our arms, our hands. right? No pressure, just our presence as we come together collectively as a community on this gratitude shift Wednesday. All right. Let's shift how we see the things that's standing in our way today, you guys. Up our necks, our face, lips, nose, eyes, our ears, right? And then the space around us, just getting very present, just getting very present. All right. All right. Drop a word in the chat. Let me know how you doing this morning. How are you doing this morning? I'm excited really about this series. Seizing control of your life. I think that, it definitely is those bite is definitely going to give you those bite-sized nuggets and hopefully shift, right, how you start to see, your triggers, your obstacles, the patterns, right, and really start to help you to get in alignment. And I'm very excited about this week's conversation, just all about our values. Why? Because that's what matters most, right? So we know that we're talking about seizing control of your life with the plan, right? With the plan, and the the P in plan is prioritizing our values, right? And so this week we're talking about prioritizing our values, you guys. Good morning, Lewis. Okay, so let's shift how we so today we're talking about the obstacles. So let's shift how we see the things that stand in the way, because some of them really are trying to guide us back to what really matters. Okay. So I want to ask you, what areas in your life feel heavy or stuck right now? Okay. I want you to be thinking about that. Right? Who this session is really for. This session is for someone if you keep hitting the same wall in your relationships, in your job, or in your energy. All right. You're emotionally exhausted. You're emotionally exhausted, but by situations that don't match your values, you guys, that don't match your values. You've been tolerating more than you've been aligning. All right. You've been tolerating more than you've been aligning. This is for you if you are ready to really stop calling it growth when you're really self abandoning, right? All right. This session is for you if you're ready to stop calling it growth when it's really self abandonment. All right. All right. So, our powerful quote for today: obstacles aren't always blocks, sometimes they're boundaries you haven't honored. Okay. Good morning, Gladys. Listen, obstacles aren't always blocks. Sometimes they're boundaries you haven't honored. Okay. All right. So obstacles aren't just the things in your way, you guys. They're the things that show up that show you what you've been tolerating. All right. Obstacles aren't just the things in your way. They're the things that show you what you've been tolerating. All right. When we often think obstacles are external, the job, the schedule, the people, the pressure. But many of the biggest obstacles is these internal conflicts, right? Resentment, where you're saying yes out of guilt. Burnout, where you're not really honing in, or where you're not honing or honoring your need for rest, right? Anxiety, where you're trying to live up to values that aren't even yours. All right. All right. So the obstacle is the mirror showing you where your life is out of alignment with your values. And I just want to let you know this is why values, we have to start prioritizing our own, right? Because a lot of the struggles that we're feeling, good morning, brother. Okay. Because a lot of the struggles that we're feeling, a lot of this tension that we're feeling, you guys, is a misalignment. So I want you to ask yourself, what areas in my life, or areas in my life where I feel heavy, where I feel stuck, where I feel misaligned right now? Okay. What values are you abandoning in that space? Right. And what value do you need to reclaim? And again, being very gentle, if you don't even know, right? This is an opportunity. If you got triggered by that, we talked about triggers yesterday, right? If you got triggered by that, that's an invitation to say, let me start to discover what my values are, right? And then who gave me this value? A lot of us are still living from the values that who gave us? Our mom gave us, community gave us, the church gave us, right? And we grown in our 40s and our 30s and our 60s, right? And we haven't updated our value system to really align with the person that we are, right? Right. So and then I want you to ask, where are you still living in contradiction to the truth you said that you believe? Okay. Where are you living in contradiction to the truth that you said you believe? Listen, when you answer those questions, these are the obstacles. These are the obstacles. So Patty Cake said, this is, or Miss Patricia, uh, said, that's good. The obstacle is the mirror. And she said, what values do you need to claim? Yes. And then Miss Gladys said, yes. Self-abandoning is the best way to put it. Thank you for the vocabulary because I couldn't put it into words. Yes, we're self-abandoning ourselves and it's so conditional. Remember, we talked about this condition. Some things are so conditional that we are doing it by habit, right? We're doing it by habit. Okay, patty cake is cool. Thank you. We're doing it by habit, you guys, right? And when we do things off a habit, we're not even conscious of it. And a lot of us are abandoning ourselves, and that's the shrinking, right? I feel this way. I'm scared to stand in that or sit in it. And so I shrink. As soon as I shrink, I've abandoned me. I've abandoned me. I've abandoned my truth. I've abandoned the thing I value the most. I've abandoned me. And right. And at that point, now I stop trusting myself. And it becomes a snowball effect, truly. Right. It becomes a snowball effect, which we're going to talk more about tomorrow. Listen, I want to go back to Jasmine. We talked about Jasmine yesterday, right? So a Monday session, we met Jasmine, right? Or we met Jasmine, who declared that she valued peace over performance, right? But and we understood her story. But Wednesday, she felt overwhelmed again. Her calendar was full, her body was tight, and her mind was restless. Okay, the obstacle overcommitting to stay needed, right? To stay needed. She started to overcommit, you guys, because she wanted to feel needed. Jasmine didn't need another productive hack. She needed alignment. Okay. When she looked at her schedule, she said, this doesn't reflect what I said I value. Everything, when she looked at her schedule and said, this doesn't reflect what I value, everything shifted. She canceled two things. She reclaimed her breath, right? She took a minute, she paused, right? And then the obstacle wasn't the schedule. She realized, oh no, my obstacle is not my schedule. It was her subconscious belief that being valuable meant what? Being busy. Being valuable to her, she had taught herself that being valuable was busy. So let's go deeper into Jasmine. Again, on Monday, Jasmine realized, remember, she inherited a story that her worth was tied to how much she could do for others, right? She declared and then at that point she declared a new value: peace over performance, right? On Tuesday, she was triggered when she told someone, her friend, no, right? Remember, she texted her friend and she said no for the first time in a long time. And once she did that, right, a flood of guilt came in, right? But she stayed grounded in her truth, right? Now she has this value. She started to prioritize, right? So, okay, I'm going to prioritize. My new value is peace over performance. That means I don't got to say yes to everybody who asked me to do something. Her friend asked her to do something. She said no, triggered that feeling of guilt, right? She got over that. On Wednesday, guess what? An obstacle showed up. The obstacle was her calendar. Jasmine got back to work and her calendar was packed again, right? The pressure was mounting. She told herself she valued peace, but her schedule didn't reflect it, right? She was exhausted by 10 a.m. and wondering, how did I end up here again? How did I end up here again, right? This is the obstacle, not just her calendar, but her unconscious return to overfunctioning, right? Her alignment is off. She's saying one thing, but living another thing, you guys. And that's not failure. That's a feedback loop. Okay. That was her feedback loop. So Jasmine had to pause again, right? She canceled a meeting. She and carved out some time for rest. She realized that the obstacle isn't the demand, it's her default, right? Her default way of being is to fill her calendar up, right? So remember, we have to get out of our conditioned mind and go to what? Manual. We have to go out of our automatic state and go into manual. Unconsciously, she's saying yes. Yes, I can do that. Yes, yes, yes. She looked at her schedule. She's like, whoa, okay, if I'm prioritizing peace, this schedule doesn't reflect that. Guess what she changed her language. She didn't say, oh, here I go again, I failed. No, she saw that as a feedback loop, right? And then she took the steps, and now that she sees it, she can shift it, right? So this is the gratitude shift, you guys. Not because it's easy, but because the obstacle gave her a mirror and she chose to respond with alignment. This is the work. This is the work. Life is going to show up not with how we want it to show up, but we get to look, reflect, and then we make decisions. Right? We make decisions. Patty Cake said it's not failure, it's a feedback loop, right? The default automatic core belief thought is feeding her actions. Yes. So she's restructuring the mind. Absolutely. Right. So she's restructuring, and the cognitive restructuring is the thing that we have to do for the rest of our life. And I know that there's a story in our mind that I'm gonna get up one day and I'm just gonna learn how to do this, and and it just should be automatic. Most of the stuff once we change it into a habit, it'll come up. But life ain't on your time. Life is gonna do what life gonna do, and we have to stop reacting to life and start responding to it and start seeing it as like, okay, life is showing up. Now I have a process or a system for how I respond to it when it starts to show up. All right. All right. Does that make sense? That makes sense. Put a heart in the chat for me. All right. So here's our mirror moment, you guys. All right. I want you to pause and I want you to ask yourself, where in your life are you most exhausted, you're most resentful, or overwhelmed? Okay. Where in your life are you most uh, exhausted, resentful, or overwhelmed right now? What does that area say about your values? Right? What does that area say about the values you've been living by? All right. What does that say about the values you've been living by, you guys? My whole computer just froze. That it is. Okay. Am I back? Okay, I'm back. I'm back. Okay, so what does that? So let me go back to our mirror moment. My whole computer froze. I apologize for that. All right, so I want you to pause. Where in your life are you most exhausted, resentful, and overwhelmed right now? Right, and what does that say about your values? Right, the values that you're living right now. And if you don't know, that's okay. It's time to discover that. Right. Okay. Another mirror moment is when you live out of alignment of your values. I want you to know that life gets heavy. Life gets heavy. And when you return to your real value, things don't get easier, you guys, but they do get clearer. And that's where the ease come in. Because have you ever met a person and they yes is yes and they no is no? And you can kind of get aggravated because you sometimes want their yes, you want their yes to be your yes. And they're like, no, right? They're so aligned in their values and it doesn't bring up any type of feelings for them because they're so clear that that is not who they are or not what they do. This is my lane and this is what I do. And I'm so comfortable in this. I'm going to sit in it. That's alignment, right? Right. So when we get aligned, when we're out of alignment, that's that heaviness. That's that weight that we feel, right? Right. But when we turn back to our real values, you guys, it doesn't make life so much easier, but it does make it clearer. Okay, it does make it clearer because here's the thing: obstacles are not the enemy, right? They are the invitation. They reveal where your behavior and your beliefs are not in sync. Okay. They don't always mean that doesn't always mean you're off track. That just means that it's time for realignment. And let me say this, if you ever went to a chiropractor or anything, you know that there's adjustments in life, right? I mean, anything. You go drive your car, you have to go back and fill your car up. You go eat food, right? You burn that energy off. You got to go back and eat more food. You drink water, you know the thirst is coming back, right? Life is a digestive process. And so this realignment process is a thing that we're constantly going to be doing, right? So I don't want to call it work. I want to call it living, right? That's the part of life, is that we're constantly readjusting and readjusting and readjusting. Why? Because that's the alignment. And life tends to, get us out of alignment. And so we have to in some way move back. Life has a way of emptying our tank, and then we fill ourselves back up. Life has a way of, making us feel drained, and then we do things, right? We in that conversation about purpose that we had, right, we find the things that give us energy, right, so we can have the energy to do our vocational purpose and to be in our relational purpose, right? These are the tools and the skills to what, to have a truly fulfilled life, right? So I don't want to call it work. I just want to say this is life, right? Listen, when you ignore misalignment, right, you lose clarity, right? When you ignore misalignment, you lose clarity, energy, and trust in yourself. Okay? Living out of alignment causes emotional fog, it causes fatigue, and it causes fragmentation. I want to say that again. When you ignore misalignment, you lose clarity, you lose energy and trust in yourself, you guys. Living out of alignment causes the emotional fog. It causes the fatigue and the fragmentation, right? What you really want is peace that doesn't require performance. You want a life that really reflects your deepest values, not your old programming. All right? Right. I had a client say, I didn't realize how much I was tolerating until I saw it written down. Once I got clear about my real values, I stopped negotiating with what drained me. Right. I stopped negotiating those things because here's the thing, research on value based living showed that when people make choices aligned in their core beliefs, that align with their core beliefs, you guys, guess what? They experience higher emotional resilience, lower stress, and increased fulfillment. All right? You don't have to force clarity, it will meet you at the point of your alignment. You don't have to force clarity, it will meet you at the point of your alignment. This is what you want, isn't it? Right? A lot of us are out there fighting for clarity and trying to get clear. And listen, it will come to you when you start to figure out you. Okay. Right. When you start to really say, what are my values? And again, I want to say there is that grief process of what? Of that old condition that you're letting go. Right. It is a lot of things that come with that, which is again why I encourage you to get in a community, right? To get a therapist, to get a coach to really walk you through this process, right? To really walk you through this process. Lewis said, say that again, right? So to really walk you through this process, right? Or to support you through this process, because you already know. And here's a lot of us are not shifting and changing right now today because we know that sometimes the community that we in, it doesn't provide the structure and support it. And intellectually, we know that we can't change. And that's why we have to go into manual to make sure that we're in a community and that we have the support that we need so that we can feel safe. Because remember, I talked about the nervous system yesterday. The nervous system is there to protect you. And if it feels like it's unsafe, it's going to always, always, always make a change feel overly scary. Okay. And so we want to join programs like Project Life. We want to, I know, like I said, Brittany has a program. We want to get with therapists. We want to start to really do this work and have a person to really hold a space for us, right? Because listen, I'm going to say it again. You don't have to force clarity, right? It will meet you at the point of alignment. Alignment is your work. All right. All right. So let's go to our stop it framework. So we know that the O in stop it, right, is obstacles, right? These aren't just these aren't just problems, you guys, they're messengers, right? I know that we've seen obstacles as problems, but they're not. Obstacles are always, 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 in most cases, let me say this. Obstacles in most cases are there to create an opportunity if we create the right mindset. All right. So they're not problems, right? They're messengers. They show you where you've been out of sync with your spirit. All right. They show you where you've been out of sync with your spirit. And when you pay attention, they help you to pivot into peace, right? They help you to pivot into peace. Obstacles reveal where your yes is too loud and your truth is too quiet. Okay. Obstacles reveal where your yes is too loud and your truth is too quiet. All right. So I want to talk about uh what the obstacles look like. So where are you living out of alignment? Okay. These obstacles, where do they show up? Okay. So I want to say that not every obstacle is an attack, right? Some are reflections, right? Some of these obstacles are reflections. So sometimes the things you call an obstacle is really just a consequence of staying out of alignment, right? So we're saying it's an obstacle, but it's really just a consequence, right? Cause and effect. It's a universal law, right? The job that drains you reflect a value, may reflect a value misfit, right? The job just may not align with your values, right? And that's why you're being drained. So that's a misalignment, right? The constant resentment might be a sign that your yes doesn't match your truth. Really, you doing something that you really don't want to do, right? And so now you're building resentment, okay? Right? The tension in your body could be your spirit saying, this is not the life I agreed to, right? And it's whispering to you and you feel it, okay? Listen, obstacles are opportunities to really investigate our alignment. They're not there for us to judge ourselves, for us to be cruel to ourselves, for us to put ourselves down. They're there for us to start to do some investigating. All right. Why am I feeling this? Why do I feel so drained? Right. And when we can start really looking at our value system and updating it, right, we can start to it just becomes so clear. Okay. It can really start to provide the clarity that we're looking for. I also want you to know that obstacles aren't always external. Again, they're often internal contradictions. All right. They're internal contradictions. All right. The most exhausting obstacle isn't the one that's in front of you. It's not the one that's in front of you. It's the war between what you believe and how you behave. The obstacle is a lot of times the war between what you believe and how you behave. Okay. Again, you value peace, but you're choosing performance, right? You value honesty, but you're hiding how unhappy you are. All right. You value freedom, but you say yes to everything out of guilt, right? I want to remind you, you're not stuck. You're not stuck, right? You're living in conflict, right? And a lot of us will say, I just feel stuck. I just feel so stuck. No, you're just in conflict. And last week we talked about the O being the opportunity cost. And some of us don't want to pay the cost, right? So we know that the O in now, right? The framework is stopping now, and in the O in now is opportunity cost. And so sometimes these decisions, when I choose this value and I stand on this value and I sit in this value, that means that that's going to come at a, that's I'm gonna. There's a cost to that. And some of us don't want to pay that cost, right? Some of us don't want to pay the cost, not realizing that we are what? Paying the cost, right? We're paying the cost because we're feeling it. All right. So you're not stuck. You're living in conflict. All right. And conflict creates confusion, conflict creates fatigue, and conflict creates emotional resistance. All right. All right. So we can be gentle with ourselves because now we know it's not that I'm stuck. I'm in conflict with myself. And how do I resolve this? Right. And that may take a week, that may take a month, that may take some years, but you can give yourself permission to now start to really work with the conflict that's within you. All right. All right. Another thing is you can be grateful for the obstacle, not because it's fun, but because it's revealing something. Again, this is Gratitude Shift Wednesday. Okay. So when you start seeing obstacles as mirrors instead of mountains, right, you shift into clarity, you guys. You shift into clarity. Gratitude isn't gratitude here isn't about like a fake positivity or anything like that. It's really saying thank you, frustration, right? Thank you, frustration, for showing me where I've been tolerating what doesn't match my truth, right? Thank you, beautiful, wonderful body, for really frustrating me enough when I wasn't fully aware. My nervous system or my emotions frustrated me enough and showed and provided this mirror for me so that I can, realize that I'm out of alignment. Okay. Right. Right. So that's the gratitude. That's the gratitude. All right. And I want you to know that uh that is kind of a spiritual maturity, right? And that's some emotional wisdom when we can look at our frustration and be grateful for it because we know that that frustration is there what to invite us, right? It's there to communicate to us. It's a feedback loop, right? That is communicating back to us. Like I said, when emotions show up, when we feel lack emotions, it's just say, hey, feed me, right? Sadness is saying, feed me connection, right? Loneliness, right? Depression, feed me connection, right? I need something, right? And so we don't have to judge it. We can have some compassion for it and then figure out how to feed that lack, right? With our space of abundance because we are abundant beings, all right? And we have a lifetime to do that. We have a lifetime to do that. And so we can be gentle with ourselves in that process, all right? So alignment, and then also alignment doesn't mean ease, all right? And I think that this is another thing. We talk about alignment and we also talk about peace and alignment, but alignment doesn't mean ease, you guys. It means integrity, all right. I remember, I'm gonna say this and then I'm gonna go into this conversation about integrity, right? Living in alignment won't make you feel perfect, but it will make you feel lighter. All right. Living in alignment won't make you feel perfect, you guys, but it will make you feel lighter because alignment removes the pressure to perform or pretend. Okay. You no longer carry other people's values. You're living from your own truth. And that creates a space, right? That spiritual pattern that's authentically creating energy for you, right? That space. If you watch my video, that's the acronym I created, right? So it creates a space, right, of peace, right? Of certainty in you, right? Even in the uncertainty, right? Even in the discomfort, right? This is the peace beyond understanding. Like I know life is falling apart. I know they mad at me. I know that, it doesn't everything doesn't seem cool, but I'm okay. I have a peace beyond my own understanding. That's alignment, right? Because you okay. It's like you found the eye of the storm. You see everything, crashing around you, but there's a piece that in your space. Why? Because you found your values and you sitting in there, you standing in that. Right? If that makes sense, put a heart in the chat for me. All right. So I remember this conversation that I was having with an individual when I first got introduced to the word integrity. I was in my maybe late 20s, early 30s, right? And I really didn't understand like integrity and character. Like, what is the difference between integrity and character? Because they was throwing it like, the character of a man. And it was told to me like this. So the house, so you have a home, and the character of the home is like the shutters, right? And the landscape, and and how the house looks, right? And so like the color of it, like the what you put, the type of shingles you have on the roof, right? So when we think about our character, you're thinking about like the aesthetics, right? How you show up. But the integrity of the home is how it's built, right? So I don't know if you've been in a home, where you can go in a basement and it's literally logs, like old logs. That's like the floorboards, right? So I do homes, and when I go in, I can go in the basement and I can see it's tree trunks that they've literally cut in half and just use them as like baseboards. Okay. So that's the integrity. And a lot of times these new homes, when people are going into these new homes and you can hear in the walls, right? You can hear between the walls, and people say this house isn't built with integrity, right? Because they don't have the right the studs are not, or the walls are thin, right? And so when we're thinking about integrity, we're really thinking about how are you built, okay? That is the soundness of you, and that integrity, that build of you is truly based on your values. And I want to give you permission to say, and your values are your values. There are some houses that's built with, with wood, right? With logs. There's some houses that's built with metal, right? You get to build your foundation how you want to build it, right? Based on your unique DNA, based on you know, your unique makeup, but it's your job to figure that out, right? So then you can stand solid in your integrity, right? I do think the story of the three little pigs is a story of what? Integrity, right? The first little pig built his house with what? Straw. He was just trying to do something. Second pig built his house with what? Sticks, right? Third little pig took his time, brick by brick, right, and built his house. When the big bad wolf came, right, and the big bad wolf represented what? Life, circumstances, conditions, right? Um, Anything in life, right? It blew the sticks away, right? Because that first little pig didn't have integrity. He was just doing something quick, right? Right? Big bad wolf came and blew that up, blew those sticks away. Blew them straws away. Second little pig, he thought he was gonna do a little bit more, right? I'm gonna put a little bit more character in this, right? Life came and hit him again. The big bad wolf being life, right? We all heard the story of the big bad wolf. I just want to make sure we all on the same page, right? Right? If we did, put a heart in the chat, right? The big bad wolf came, blew, right? Them sticks fell down, right? But then life came to that third little pig, okay? But because he took his time and he figured out what he wanted, right? He built his house of brick, right? That's the sound, that's the integrity. All right, okay? No matter how life blew at him, right? He did not fall. And who ran to him? The other pigs. And you will notice that when you start to live and prioritize your values, you will become the safe haven. The people who dislike it in the beginning, the people who have something to say about it, the people like, oh, you changed, who you think you are, right? You will start to be the sound person, because guess what? Every time you show up, you showing up as who you are. And as a consequence of that, you start to trust you. When you start to trust you, guess what? People start to trust you. And just like that third little pig, when life started to happen, when two little pigs went to him, guess what? When life started to happen to people, guess what they'll start to call? And if you're a person that you feel like you want to support those people, you can, if that's what you value. And if you don't, right, you don't have to. Okay. But that is integrity, right? So again, alignment isn't won't make won't make life perfect, but it will make it lighter. Okay. And alignment doesn't mean ease, you guys. It just means integrity, the ability to stand in your truth. So you're no longer carrying other people's values. You're living from your own truth, right? And that creates peace, even in your discomfort, even in your discomfort, you guys. All right. And then another thing is the most important question isn't what's blocking you. Okay. This is another obstacle. I think the most important question isn't what's blocking me, right? Is where am I betraying myself, right? A lot of times we feel blocked and we feel stuck, but a question could be like, where am I betraying myself, right? This is the key to really turning your obstacles into opportunities, right? The obstacle is not my enemy. The obstacle is the evidence. It's showing you what's no longer aligned and giving you permission to choose again, right? And I'm using betrayal softly, right? Not in this harsh, like you betrayed yourself. No, it's a word because I want you to see that that's what that is. You're abandoning yourself and you're betraying yourself, right? And that's why you can't trust yourself because you've been with yourself the longest. You know the lies that you're telling yourself, right? And that's okay. It's okay that you know that. And I want you to be a friend to yourself on this journey as you start to get this information, right? And not be like, oh, yeah, I do that. And get into this cycle of judging yourself harshly, okay? Because guess what? The mind want to be safe. And a lot of the betrayal and a lot of the abandonment is what? It's our nervous system trying to keep us safe. It's our ego trying to make us feel right. But that's not growing us. And that's why we feel stuck. And that's why we feel way down. And that's why we feel misaligned. And that's why we feel like we don't have the energy. Right? Right? And so we have to start being gentle with our awareness of these gaps. Okay. All right. All right. Listen, your obstacle is often connected to what you've been avoiding. All right. This is another thing. Your obstacle is often connected to what you've been avoiding. Right. So sometimes we call something an obstacle, but really it's a place where we haven't made a decision. Right. It's a place where we haven't made a decision. Unresolved decisions create emotional congestion. I say emotional constipation. Okay. The boundaries you still haven't set, the job you know you've outgrown, but you still there, right? The habits you won't release, even though they're costing you your peace, right? The longer you delay clarity, the louder the obstacle becomes, right? The longer you delay clarity, the longer the obstacle, the louder the obstacle becomes, right? Avoidance really turns avoidance turns obstacles into identity blocks, right? When we avoid, it really turns these obstacles into identity blocks, you guys. All right. All right. All right. And then we tolerate, toleration is a silent thief. All right. Toleration this is an obstacle, tolerating. Okay. Sometimes your obstacle is not a crisis, you guys. It's your capacity getting drained by constant toleration. All right. What are you putting up with that is silently chipping at your peace, silently chipping at your time, and at your truth. All right. You don't have to wait for burnout to be realigned. You don't have to wait for burnout to be realigned. Glad to say the habit you won't release again. Say the habit you won't release again. Are you asking me to say that? Say the habit that I won't release again. Just write it back in there for me. All right. So so the tolerating is a silent thief. All right. And sometimes your obstacle is not a crisis, it's your capacity getting drained by constant toleration. Okay. So what you are putting up with is silently chipping away at your peace, at your time, and at your truth. All right. You don't have to wait for burnout. Oh, that quote. All right. You don't have to wait for burnout. You don't have to wait for burnout to realign. All right. All right. You are allowed to stop tolerating what doesn't reflect your truth without guilt. You are allowed to, to stop tolerating what doesn't reflect your truth without guilt. All right? All right? Listen, obstacles show you where you need to be honored, not fixed. All right? Obstacles show you what needs to be honored, not fixed. We have this thing about I need to be fixed. And there are gaps. There are spaces that need to be healed. There are awarenesses that need to take place. There is a shaping and a molding that needs to be applied because, growing up, you were molded a lot of times in the image of your parents, of your community, of those conditions. And so there is a retraining of your mind to really remold you into the person that you are today, right? Or into your person. And we think that that's a brokenness, and that's not always broken, right? That is just you haven't activated you. You're running off of somebody else's values. You're running off of somebody else's beliefs, and you're running off of somebody else's program. That don't mean you're broken. That just means you haven't started, right? And so you need to, activate your life, right? And you need to become active in your life. And a lot of us have the decisions we made is because we were told to make them. Go to school, get a degree, get married, have kids, buy a house, invest in stocks, get a good job, right? And you're thinking to yourself, like, I've done everything that I was told to do. I was the good girl. I got married. I had kids. I, did this. Why am I still unhappy? I'm the guy, I'll go out and work hard. I provide for my family. I take care of my kids, right? Like I'm checking all the checklists. Like, why am I not feeling fulfilled? You know? And a lot of it is just misalignment. Like you was given those rules, right? But have you really taken the recipe that someone gave you and made it your own? Right? And again, you hear me use this recipe analogy a lot because, when you're given a recipe, like a real recipe, you put a little more salt in it, or you take a little salt out of it, or, you find a way to make that meal fit your taste buds. If you eat spaghetti, if you like it a little sweeter, you probably put a little sugar in it, right? You know, if you eat grits, some people eat it with sauce, some people eat it with sugar, right? We make it unique to us in every other area. Even if you buy a car, right? You may, put make that car unique to you so it doesn't look like every other vehicle. So you may put a different tag on the back or, tint the windows or, do something else different. So now this car that I purchased, even though I bought it and it looked like every other car on the lot, when I got it, right, I did something unique to it to put my fingerprint on it. Okay. But we don't do that in our own life. We're still walking around uh, mimics of our old environment. Okay. And I'm saying that doesn't mean you're broken or that you need to be fixed. I just mean that you need to start to honor your space and really understand what you value. Who are you? What is it that you want? And again, the mind is there, the brain is there to what? To give you the answers to your questions, right? And quality questions, right, will get you quality answers. So when you say I don't know, right, then the mind is going to continue to show you why you don't know. So if you just could say, I'm gonna get curious, I want to get curious about what it is I need, right? Just start to investigate. And I work with a lot of people who say, I just don't know what I want. Do you not know what you want? Or are you scared to say what you want? Right? And that's okay. But let's get honest because the truth will set you free. Right? And I'm not here to judge you, and you don't gotta go run and get that thing today. But at least let's liberate the truth. Let's set it free for this moment. All right. Do you not really know? Or are you scared to say it? All right. From fear of dot dot dot, fill in the blank. Okay. All right. So obstacles show you again what needs to be honored, not fixed. Okay. So instead of asking, how do I fix this? Start asking, what truth is this obstacle trying to get me to honor? Honoring your need for rest, honoring your desire to be seen, right? Honoring your value of creativity, of purpose, of peace, right? These obstacles are there to sometimes uh just so you can honor a space, right? Now the obstacle isn't a wall, it's a doorway to clarity, right? When we see this obstacle as a space to be honored, we no longer see it as a wall, you guys. We can see it as a doorway to clarity. Okay. All right. And then the spiritual wisdom obstacle does not equal opposition. Okay. Sometimes it's alignment testing, right? So every time you choose alignment, life will test your loyalty to that choice. Okay. Life will test your loyalty to that choice, not because God is trying to frustrate you, right? But because growth invites refinement. Okay. You said, this is how this looks. You said you value rest. Can you hold that value when the pressure of overwork shows up? Right? You said you value authenticity. Well, can you speak your truth when silence feels safer? Right? We always say, well, and I know you've heard people say this, watch what you ask for. If you ask for patience, then God will give you a reason to get patient. You know, if you ask for, strength, then God will give you a situation to make you stronger. It's similar to that, right? Sometimes that life has a way of showing up to see, like, is this what you really want? Right? And then you come right up on that line and you get triggered. And it feels a little like, ooh, you get a little vulnerable. But then we practice and we don't have to jump out there, right? But we can, yep, that's what I want. Yes. And I always say that there is a priming process that you can do. Okay. Sometimes, you can't go over, a black wall with white paint because the black wall gonna bleed through. Okay. So sometimes we have to prime our mind. And this is where the blueprint comes in. This is where we learn our values. We just don't step out and do stuff. We get back into relationship with ourselves. And then we go through like this process of, like I said, like Project Life or going to a therapist or something like that. And we do this internal work and then we practice, practice, practice. That's the priming of our brain so that I can be more prepared that's the priming, so I can be more prepared for these changes and I can know how to respond to life as it comes. All right. All right. So again, every time you choose alignment, life will test your loyalty, right, to that choice. Not because God is trying to frustrate you, but because growth invites refinement. You okay? That moment is sacred, and that's where transformation happens, you guys. And then the last one is just obstacles become teachers when you stay present. All right, when you stay present. The goal today isn't to remove every obstacle because we're never going to remove every obstacle, you guys, but it is to recognize the lesson and then respond with alignment. It is to recognize the lesson and respond with alignment because clarity doesn't always come from comfort, right? It often comes from courage. All right. All right. So today's gratitude isn't about looking about liking the obstacle. It's about thanking it for showing up. It's about thanking it for showing up. um it's about thanking it for showing you what you need to change, because when you live in alignment with your truth, every obstacle, right, it becomes holier, right, it becomes more sound, it becomes more fulfilling. Okay. All right. Our biblical wisdom for today, Proverbs 3 and 6. In all your ways, acknowledge him, and he will make your path straight. In all your ways, acknowledge him, and he will make your path straight. Listen, this verse is about alignment before action, right? It doesn't mean you have to pause and say a long prayer every time you move, right? It means pause and check in with the wisdom within you, right? The God in you before you choose. When it says acknowledge him, it's saying recognize this divine wisdom. Remember, divinity is our ability to overcome our limitations, right? Right. So there's this divinity intuitiveness that each and every one of us have. All right. So recognizing this divine wisdom in your process, right? Uh, so with this verse, when it says acknowledge him, it's saying recognize divine wisdom in your process. Let your values, not your habits, lead your decisions. Right? If I know what I value, I can stand on that, right? And I know that those values are right grounded in integrity. I know those my integrity is rooted in these universal laws, these truths, right, that were created, by the creator, right? Right? Then my habits, right, they don't lead me, right? I can have these misaligned habits, these things, but they don't lead me. And a lot of us are led by our habits, right? And not our values. All right. So what this verse is saying is let your values, not your habits, lead you. Okay. Make your path straight doesn't mean that you will not that doesn't mean there will let me say that make your path straight doesn't mean there will be no difficulties, you guys. It means your path becomes aligned, it becomes clear, and it becomes purpose driven, even if you start, even if it's still an uphill, right? Even if it's still uphill. All right. You don't need more hustle. You need more alignment, right? When you acknowledge your values, your truth, in your God given insight, decisions become more clear, you guys. This verse invites you to really move with internal clarity instead of external pressure, right? It's not about perfection, you guys. It's about alignment. All right. This verse is often read as a direction based verse. If you acknowledge God, He will give you a map, right? It's often read that way. If you acknowledge God, He will give you the map for your way. But in the context of alignment and obstacles, it's far more internal in a moment by moment thing. In all your ways, right? In how you make your calendar, in how you do your relationships, in your thought patterns, pause and ask, does this reflect my truth? Right? Does this honor the God within me? Right? When you do that, your path doesn't get easier, you guys. It gets straighter. It gets more aligned, right? Because it becomes more aligned with your real values and less detoured and less burnt out and more in flow, right? Does that make sense? Put a heart in the chat for me. I often say that God done what God's going to do. And a lot of us are looking for direction, but we already have a lot of what we need, you guys. Okay? So, in all your ways, in everything that you're doing, and how you're communicating, and how you're connecting, and in your relationships, right? If we just pause and ask, does this reflect my truth, right? And does this honor the divinity within me, right? If that's who I'm in relationship with, if that's my goal, right? Right? When you do that, your path doesn't get easier, right? Because those things are not always easy, right? But it does get straighter, right? It does get straighter. It becomes more aligned with your real values, less detoured, less burned out, and more flow. All right. God isn't waiting at the finish line. Okay. He's not waiting at the finish line. He's in the choices. He's in the notices. He's in the pause before the yes or the no. All right. So acknowledging God isn't just about prayer. It's about checking in with your spirit before you commit, right? Alignment is the path, right? And that's how he straightens it, right? Right. And that is why we have work to do, right? Because we have to know what we believe, what our values are, right? Right? And then Isaiah 13 and 21, that is our promise verse. This is our promise verse, right? Your ears shall hear a word behind you saying, this is the way, walk in it, right? Whenever you turn to the right or the left. All right, Isaiah 30:21. Your ears shall hear word behind you saying, this is the way, walk in it whenever you turn to the right or the left. All right. This is about course correction through inner guidance, right? Even when, even when you veer off track into people pleasing, into fear, into busyness, into burnout, right? There's a way to be, there will be this gentle voice reminding you that this isn't it. Come back, right? This isn't it. Come back. I was working with a client yesterday. I went over my time. I have a little timer. Um, so I was working with a client yesterday, and we're working on alignment because a lot of the work that I do with clients is about alignment. And so she has this friend, and she went to visit her, and she said that she, similar to Jasmine, she said that she wanted to, like something said, don't go or whatever, and she didn't trust that, right? And she went anyway, and she's talked about, like, how it felt, right? But it was this little whisper to her, right, that said, like, don't go. And while she was there, it was whispering, that's not it, right? And so in our session, we reframed it because, of course, that conversation was a lot differently. But by the end, we got to see that as a lesson, right? Like maybe that was just life being a lesson. Like maybe it was meant for you to go so you can really start to trust yourself, right? Really start to hear that inner voice, right? And then really bringing it back to her. But this voice, this intuitiveness, right? Um, it was really guiding her in what her values was, and she knew that. But at that point, right, she didn't want the judgment from the friend. Okay, she didn't want the judgment from the friend. So even when we veer off track into that people pleasing, into that fear, into that business, into that burnout, there's this gentle voice that's reminding you, this isn't it. Come back. That voice is not shouting in shame, you guys. So it's not this inner critic, right? It's whispering in love, and it's saying, what matters. Come back to your truth. It's about the God that walks with you, right? When we drift off, right? That's that anxious, that's that anxious tug that you get, or that feeling that we get in the pit of our stomachs, right? Or the tension. That's that spirit in you saying this isn't alignment, right? And some of us are so disconnected that we feel it, but we dismiss it. Or something happens and we like, oh, I had that feeling in my stomach, oh, something told me that, but we don't trust ourselves enough to do the things that we're getting cues to really move on, right? God doesn't leave you, doesn't, God doesn't leave when you misstep, right? He leads you back, right? And this is what this verse is saying, that you're going to veer off, that, things are going to happen. But when it happens, right, you're going to get these signals as you're veering off. It's kind of like, I don't know if you drive the new cars, they'll pull you back into the lane, right? Or, you'll hear a beep, 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 right? We have those signals in us. Now, we can still choose to go into the other lane, right? We can manually still go over to the other lane, but there is a sign or a warning that, like, hey, you going into this other lane. We have that. All right. And we can get in alignment with that. Right. And we can go to the other lane anyway, but we have the warning. And just because we went to the other lane, it doesn't mean that God is not with us anymore. Right. He's going to guide you back. All right. Your alignment is never too far gone. It's never too far gone. As soon as you listen, you return. Right. You return back. All right. Listen, alignment is obedience to your soul's knowing. When life feels heavy, it's not always resistance, right? It's redirection. Here are some takeaways. Here are some takeaways that I want you to know. Alignment is obedience to your soul's knowing. Okay. When life feels heavy, it's not always resistance, you guys. Sometimes it's redirection, right? And God isn't punishing you with obstacles. All right. The way we are created is just like that car that's in that lane, and it goes to veer off, and if you get that pull back, right, the resistance, like, hey, you want it, that's we are by design. God loved us so much that he put that mechanism in us. So we feel that resistance, right? When we're going out of alignment, right? But sometimes the pull, the desire, the condition is in the other lane. And so we don't listen. Okay. Right. So God isn't punishing you with the obstacle, right? He's positioning you for clarity. He just wants you to know, hey, you finna go to this other lane. Hey, you're out of alignment, right? And when we can be gentle with ourselves, when we can start loving on ourselves, when we can start seeing that, hey, these things are coming up, even though triggers being invitations for us, right? Right? Even our triggers being invitations for us, right? If we can start seeing them as the system that God created for us, just to hone in so that we can become the person that God created us to be, and not really judge it as harsh, or I'm something's wrong with me, or I need to be fixed, and life is so bad, right? Right? We can, if we can pause long enough, if we can just pause long enough and be gentle with ourselves, I really do think that we can get the courage to really start aligning, advancing, and accelerating our life. Listen, if you pause long enough, the spirit will allow you, will always remind you, um, uh, will always remind you of the way. All right, will always remind you of the way. Okay, now the verse that I was talking about. This verse is often seen as a mystical guidance, but in this context, it's a course correction, right? So in this context, it's a course correction. So when you get distracted or overwhelmed or start betraying your values again, the spirit within lovingly whispers, "Hey, that's not it. That's not you. Come back." Come back this way. Come back over here. We don't do that, right? It's not screaming at you. It's not saying you stupid and you dumb and there you go again, right? That's the conditioned voice, right? That's the conditioned voice. There's a gentle voice in you that's just nudging you back, all right? The voice behind you is that God consciousness within you, that intuition within you, the divine compass that tugs you, that tugs at you when you're tolerating something that your soul really never agreed to. And a lot of us are doing things that our soul really never agreed to. All right. We're doing it because somebody else wanted us to. We're doing it because for performative reasons. We're doing it because it feels good to the ego, right? But we're also feeling empty on the inside. We're feeling drained. We're feeling disconnected. We're feeling misaligned. We're feeling burnt out. We're feeling frustrated, right? Right. So that feeling of burnout, that feeling of frustration, that feeling of misalignment, that's the voice behind you, right? Not scolding you, but really guiding you back to yourself. Okay. You don't need to wait for a lightning bolt, you guys, right? You don't need to wait for a lightning bolt. The obstacle can be a whisper. It's saying, this isn't your path anymore, right? Come home. Come home to alignment. Come home to alignment. All right. Listen, obstacles don't equal punishment. Misalignment doesn't equal failure. And confusion, listen, it doesn't equal abandonment, right? Even when you've drifted from what matters, and all of us have, right? There's a God in you, there's a divineness in you that's still gently guiding you back, and still wanting you to come back and fulfill this the desire, and that's going to be in you for the rest of your life, right, and that's not the God in the sky, but something from within you, right? That's calling and needing that. All right, right. The voice of alignment. That voice of alignment doesn't scream. It nudges you, right? It nudges you. And when you pause long enough to notice the obstacle, you start to really hear the nudge more clear, more clear. All right, all right, all right. So I went over, but I think I did good. All right. So here's our action item for today. How do we do this? The action for today is I want you to identify one area. Identify one area. Um, Identify one area where you feel out of alignment. Write down what you're tolerating, and then what value that conflicts with. And what value that conflicts with. All right. And then our affirmation for today is I no longer tolerate what dishonors my values. I no longer tolerate what dishonors my values. And then our intention for today, as we wrap up this gratitude shift Wednesday. Today, I listen to what the obstacle is teaching me, right? And I align. Today, I listen to what the obstacle is teaching me and I align. And then a bonus challenge. If you want to do this for the next 24 hours, every time you feel resistance, ask, is this the boundary I need to set, a truth I need to tell, or a value I need to return to, or a value I need to return to. And I started ending all of the life lessons with a call, a challenge, and a charge. All right. And so your call today is, what truth are you walking away with? All right. The challenge is, what obstacle are you willing to stop tolerating? And the charge is to go shape your life with alignment, not apology. All right. All right. Listen, if this session, right, if this session resonated with you and you're walking away with insight today, you already know what to do. Drop a fire in the chat and let's celebrate our growth, you guys, together. Let's celebrate our growth together, right? And if this session woke up something in you, this is exactly kind of insight we explore in the weekly coaching labs, you guys. We don't just reflect, we actually help to reshape your life. We have actually helped to reshape your life, you guys. And we do that through Project Life, where we turn theory into practice. You can join for $47 a month. All right. All right. Hey, remember, if you can shape it in your mind, you guys, you can have it in your life. Listen, I love you. I love you. I love you. I will see you tomorrow for that life lesson. I will see you tomorrow for that life lesson. I love you. Till later.